All right, so hello everybody and welcome to Off-Campus Sci's webinar, Preparing for Your First Job. I'm Mackenzie Laka and I serve AK Sci as the Associate Director of Education. I'll be moderating the webcast today. Before we dive into the content, just a few housekeeping rules. We're going to ask all participants to keep themselves muted during the presentation so they can hear the speaker. But if you'd like to, you can turn your video on so that way everyone can see you, but that is completely up to you. We do have the chat feature available so you can interact with the presenter and other attendees. It is going to share your name, but consider also mentioning your chapter or your university as well. At the end of the presentation, we'll have a little Q&A, and you can submit your questions via the chat feature, or at that point, if you'd like to ask your question verbally, you can either unmute yourself or use the raise hand feature, and we'll unmute you. For our program today, we do have Jacqueline Hinarte, and at this point, I'll go ahead and hand it off to her.
Thank you, Mackenzie, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me this evening. I know it's late for some of us. For some of you that it's earlier. Again, thank you for spending time with us in AK Sci today. So today, a little bit about myself before we go into today. My name is Jacqueline Hinarte, as Mackenzie mentioned. My undergrad is in business management. However, my master's is in human resource management, which is really where my passion lies. Especially in the recruitment side of it all, either helping others get ready or preparing for their first jobs, to how to navigate life, especially your first year within your career or in a new company. I also currently work for Apple, where I have been for about a year and a half now. I am a retail manager, so I am in the field for them with the stores. So with that today, it is a little bit about preparing for your first job. It's going to be a little bit like post-job. So how do you get there? How do you really set yourself up for success for your first job? And a little bit of once you have your first job, or maybe even an internship, how do you set yourself up for success as well throughout your internship? So first, we're going to start with a little bit of research on the company and their expectations. So of course, what are their hours of operations, things that you might want to bring. And what I mean by things you might want to bring is also, if you're going for the interview, just being prepared for that. If it's bringing physical few copies of your resume, physical few copies of contacts that you might have, that they might need, depending on what type of job you're going for. If you need to bring some type of portfolio or work that you've done in the past. The other things that you might want to look into before you even apply is their benefits packages. And a lot of that, sometimes you cannot find straight from the job description or the job field. You have to search within the company and their benefits. Now, there's companies like Google that will lay it all out there because they're extremely proud of their benefits, and they like to showcase that for everyone. And then there's other companies that also have great benefits. However, they won't showcase that until you're speaking to a recruiter or you're getting to your last portions of your interview, just because they know they have very competitive benefits, or they're companies that a lot of people like to apply for, so they like to withhold some of those benefit informations. As far as benefits, most individuals usually only think of their salary, but there's so much more than that. I don't want you to think of salary. When I want you to think about when you are either searching for a company or you're actually going to go and start negotiating, I want you to start using the verbiage total comp, total compensation. That is really what you want to go after. And then what does your total compensation compose of? So that will be your salary. If there is any time of personal time off, sick days or holidays, or if it's just all one. There's a lot of companies that have just gone strictly to just PTO that encompasses sick and holiday. There's some that still separate that. What does your medical insurance or dental insurance, vision insurance look like? What type of life insurance might they have as well? What type of company match or volunteering for hours or work do they have? What does their 401k match look like? Do they offer any type of stock investments? Those are all things that you can look at for total comp, and more depending on what it looks like for you. So for example, for me, when I look for total comp, one of my biggest things is actually, do they match time for money? So I do a lot of volunteer work, especially a lot of time with AK Sci. So I always like to see that the time that I give to AK Psy, will that company pay out to AK Psy the time that I invest to them? And that is something that is very big on my total comp. So I want you to think about total comp in this way. So we're going to use easy numbers right now. You go for a job and you think, oh, look, they're offering me $50,000. Then you go for another job and they're offering you $45,000. And you think, of course, I'm going to go for the one that's 50,000 is more, because you're going just off of salary. However, the job that offers 50, when you look at their total comp, it might only be 54,000. And the one that was 45, maybe their total comp is 55,000 or 56,000, more than the other one, because of everything else that they gave you along with it. So those are just a few things to keep in mind when you're looking at benefits and you start negotiating. The other thing when it comes to negotiation and benefits is if you're going to ask for any type of signing bonus, and you don't lose anything for asking. And I always say that because a lot of people are sometimes shy or they don't know how to even bring up a signing bonus. A lot of recruiters are used to it. It's a simple question if you offer any type of signing bonus. And then sometimes just because you ask, they'll start negotiating that. Another sidebar, especially to any female that's listening to the call when it comes to salary, I know that there's a lot of talk about the wage gap. And it has been closing, but it's still there. I will tell you one of the number one things about wage gap is simply that men ask for more than women do. So don't be afraid to ask for it. Don't sell yourself short. Just go for it. Because one of the main things for wage gap is that men just ask for more. From there, we're going to go into dress code. So we do see here, especially for men, we have 2 professional dress, and then for women, same thing. However, what I will ask you to do is to really look into the company culture when it comes to dress code. And if you're setting yourself up for the interview, it is okay. I actually 100% recommend that you ask the recruiter, what does the dress code look like for the interview? Or how should you expect to dress for the interview? I know me, I was always taught with AK Psy to dress professional to the T all the time. I always have my black suit, my heels, and back in the day, because I'm a little older, even stockings. I don't use those anymore, but even back in the day, stockings. However, I will never forget, and I appreciate that for my current company, my recruiter even reminded me, she's like, by the way, make sure you do not wear a suit. Make sure you wear denim and like a cute top. That's it. Be casual. Even if you wear a sweatshirt, that's fine, because that's the culture there. If you wear a suit, you actually won't fit in. And I was so appreciative of that because I would have never thought to ask. And then it reminded me that it's so good. I 100% always tell you guys, ask the recruiter what is the company culture or how you should dress for the interview. Same thing. Once you are ready for your first day on the job, you've already signed your contract, you can ask the recruiter, or if they've already partnered you with HR of where you're going, ask them, hey, how should I expect to dress the first day? You don't want to be underdressed. I know people always say it's better to be overdressed than underdressed, but that actually depends on the company culture, because I know where I'm at, it's probably better to be underdressed than overdressed where I work. So just make sure to ask. Also, when it comes to company culture, there's a few other things that we're going to go over and take a deeper look at for that. So a few job tips, especially when it comes to company culture. We're actually going to start in the second one. Don't eat lunch alone. Really take a feel with how it is. I'm done expecting you to eat lunch with everyone every single day, especially if you're a natural introvert and you like to decompress or separate yourself, because that's me over here. However, that is a great time for you to connect, get to know your other coworkers, start building those networks that you might need. The other thing about, eating lunch alone and sometimes eating it with others, like my sister likes to put it, her key phrase is, you don't want to suffer from FOMO. If you don't know what FOMO is, it's the fear of missing out. You don't want to be left out of the joke or the inside joke. And a lot of times that happens over the water cooler or during lunch. Don't fake it until you make it. So what I mean by that is when you start your first job, you're not expected to know everything. Even if your credentials come in and they're praising you all around, that's what your boss is there for. They are actually looking forward for you to ask what you need help with, because they're there to help you develop and to help you grow. Don't wait till the last minute when something's due or a project deadline to say you won't make it or you didn't understand. It's okay to start from the beginning and just say, hey, could you clarify this for me? Could we phrase this in another way? This doesn't make sense. So don't fake it until you make it. Set boundaries to prevent burnout. And again, this goes with the company culture as well. If you joined a company that everybody, yes, their salary, but maybe they all, instead of clocking out at 5, they clock out at 6, gauge that and see what that work-life balance is going to look like. I know Target, for example, they have great starting salaries. Very good for starting executives as well. However, their contracts are automatically out of 45-hour work weeks instead of 40. So you want to look into that as part of the company culture and make sure if you're signing contracts, your salaries, what is that weekly workload really look like? From there, if you start pumping 50, 60 hours a week because you want to show yourself, it's really hard to take that back if that's what they're used to from you. So you want to set up those clear parameters for yourself. Same thing with your cell phone. You come in the first week, hey guys, my cell is open. You guys could text me anytime. Don't worry about it. And then 3 months later, you're like, why are they texting me on a weekend? Well, you set that up yourself. You want to set those boundaries up from the beginning, that if it's work related, those phone conversations, those text messages happen while you're working and not on your time off. Serve your colleagues and your customers. This is my favorite one from here. Absolutely my favorite one. There's no better testament to your work than your customers and the reports that they might give about you, and also your colleagues. It is a big misconception that for you to get praise, recognition, even for you to get promoted, is solely based on the work that you do and that you showcase. I will tell you something, as someone in HR, as a leader, that I have the privilege of promoting a lot of individuals. One of the best things for me is when I have conversations or touch base with my staff, or even while I'm interviewing others, when they mention someone else's name, that the same individual comes up with every interaction that I have. When I'm talking to others, hey, talk to me about, who helped you on this project, or how did you grow? Who's had the biggest impact on your growth? And they mention the same 1 or 2 people. Guess who I'm going to look at next for that promotion or for that leadership ability? That name that kept coming up from the rest of the team. So when you serve your colleagues and your customers, it goes such a long way. And then, of course, work hard and show up on time, which means showing up early. So one of the things that I like to do with showing up on time, and this is interview, first day on the job, whatever the case may be, is I always go and take a test drive to make sure what traffic patterns really look like, especially if you're moving into a new city. Because I don't trust Google Maps, I don't trust any of that to tell me what true traffic patterns look like. And I live in Miami, so I can attest to that. I will never trust any of these devices to tell me what true traffic patterns look like. Because it rains, that's it. Traffic patterns goes out the door. There's a car crash, that's it. Traffic patterns go out the door. So I always like to do a test drive a few days before my interview so I know where I'm going, or even the first day of a new job. So I don't have to text my boss that morning and be like, oh, I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't know what building or where to park. I've already started to figure that out, or to ask those questions beforehand. Work-life balance. So work-life balance is, like I said before, is how do you really balance your time and set up that expectation? And yes, it is okay to take your PTO, and it is okay to take what I call mental health days. You might be someone that's like, I don't know why there's sick time. I never need to use sick time. I never get sick. That is wonderful. If your company allows you to roll them over, keep them. However, every once in a while, if you just feel burned out or you just feel like, oh, I just need that one day to myself, to me, mental health is important. And that sick day could be used for that, for just that day to yourself. Maybe you just want to go and watch the new movie that's out in the middle of the day. No one's bothering you. Use that sick day. Use that mental health day. I know a lot of times you're like, oh, but it's my first year. I'm afraid I don't want to take vacation. Yes, be mindful if you have projects of working around that, but it's okay. And if you've had a great vacation planned and then all of a sudden there's a visit or a project that's due, talk through it with your boss because you are allowed. And if that came up after the fact, you are allowed to take that time off. Because I can guarantee you 2 or 3 years from now, when different conversations come up, they might not remember that you made that sacrifice. So take care of yourself. Work-life balance is very important. And again, how can you prevent burnout and promote a work-life balance is some of those simple tricks. This cell phones, smartphones, it's probably one of the greatest inventions that we've had, but it's also the one that hurts us the most when it comes to work-life balance, is knowing when to turn this off and disconnect, and knowing that when to set up those boundaries. I know a lot of companies too, it's okay, social media, everything, and connecting with coworkers, just make sure, because your entire life is documented for them as well on there, and you want to make sure that you have that separation and that nothing gets mixed. So again, those are some quick tricks and tips that I had for you guys. We still have about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to just pose it out there if you guys want to unmute yourself if there's any questions that you might have, or use the chat feature if it's about what we spoke about today, or maybe something else that you're curious about when it's preparing for your first job, if you already have it, or maybe you're leading up to that for your interviews, or how to prepare for that interview. Again, any questions that you might have, please type it in on the chat or just unmute yourself, and I'm here to answer.
Thanks, Jackie. As she did just say, please feel free to use the group chat or just unmute yourself if you're interested in the question. Start off with the first one here. So Jackie, you work in HR, you've been working this for a while. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see newer employees make when they're starting their new jobs?
So some of the biggest challenges, number one, everybody gets nervous. And I know we get into our head, and I want to say it's okay to get nervous. A lot of times people are like, oh, I don't want to mess up, or I did this, or they get into it, and it's normal. Even today, we just opened for the first day after 12 weeks, and I wanted to crawl under a rock because I was like, I can't believe I just did that. Like, I should know better. And it even took my boss to tell me, and it happens to employees on their first day, on their first week, a year and a half in, 10 years from now, it is okay. And it is okay to make a mistake. But the key thing to that, my learnings, and the learnings that, my boss also reflected back was, number one, immediately when I noticed that I made a mistake, I came forward and I was like, look, I made a mistake and I need help. And a lot of times when you enter your first job, you're afraid to speak up or say you don't know something. Or if you made a mistake, you're even more afraid, like, I can't believe I just did that. It's okay. It's just, how do we fix it and how do we move forward and grow from that? So take it as a learning.
All right. So similar vibes. What are some of the things as you're hiring somebody that you see people make during that interview process?
Say that one more time. Sorry.
So along the similar lines is, when you're hiring people, what are some of the mistakes that you see people make that maybe they forget to ask this, or they didn't consider this? You talked a little bit about not thinking about total compensation, but what are some other mistakes that people often don't think about during the interview process?
Absolutely. It's one that I would think people would know, but I see more often than not. So I'm just putting it out there. When it comes to interviewing, you get asked a lot of questions on your previous job, or why you left, or why you're seeking somewhere else. The key thing is, never, ever, ever, even if you really truly feel like that, never speak ill or badly of your previous employer, and especially your previous supervisor. You always want to put it or phrase it into how you grow, how you grew, how you learned, um, or putting towards your values. If it really was a company that you were unhappy with, or you had to leave because of differences, it's okay. I'm not telling you not to say that. It's just how we phrase it. So if it's like, for me, if it's a company that maybe I worked with that I wasn't happy with, I might phrase it more along my values or how I've grown as an individual. My values have changed. So I was seeking a company that at this point in my life aligns more with my values at this moment. That company was perfect and aligned with my values at the time that I was there. And throughout my growth and development and changes, now I am seeking for, my personal values have changed and I'm ready for something different. Could be a better way of phrasing that. So that is one mistake that I've seen. And people, they don't mean to. And there's a keywords or phrases that they've said that were negative about their previous employer or their previous supervisor. So be mindful of that, because those feelings in the back of your head tend to creep out without you even realizing it. The other mistake that I see often, and it's not really a mistake, but is they're so trained, or a lot of times we're told, like, what are your strengths? What are your opportunities? And more companies are focusing more on your strengths more and more. And people feel uncomfortable speaking well about themselves. Like, they feel bad praising themselves, and don't be. You're in an interview. You're supposed to praise yourself. You're supposed to show yourself off. Go for it. Do it. That's what you're there for. What makes you stand out from the other candidates?
So in the presentation, you named a few things, but do you have any more specific tips of ways that you can kind of help create that work-life balance?
So specific tips for work-life balance, yes. So few things. Many companies, you can utilize your email at home. Don't even set it up at home. Don't even set it up on your work computer. Don't even know how to access it. Disconnect, unless if you absolutely have to, because you're at some executive level or supervisor that you have to answer certain things in a timely fashion. Other than that, do not access your email from home. It is tempting, but don't do it. I appreciate that I currently work for a company that does not allow me to access my email from home, because what happens is you think, oh, it's only going to be from home, and the next thing you know, you're on vacation looking at your emails as well, because you can't disconnect from it. So that is one big one. I know we've mentioned the cell phones as well for work-life balance. Giving yourself parameters on how many hours a week you're going to work. Again, your first quarter, maybe in a job, month to 3 months, you might sometimes add a little extra hours because you're learning and you're new. So balance that. It's once it's become 6 months to a year that they're used to you, this quality of work with you doing 50 or 55 hours a week, and then you want to reduce it to 40, where the issues come in. So some of the tips and tricks for that is, don't be afraid to speak up when you are given projects or deadlines if it's realistic. You don't have to be the superstar and be like, I can do this in a week, and in your head you're going, no, I really need 2 weeks. Let's talk it out. See why you really need 2 weeks. And don't feel that you have to be pressured to do it by the end of the day today if you have your to-do list already full. It's okay to say, you know what, not at this moment, or how about tomorrow, or let's work out a better time, or is there something else that could be taken off my plate so I can do this, and you can discuss that with your supervisor, because that's where the extra hours come in, because you keep saying yes. And then that's the other thing, you don't need to be the yes person. And especially if you're the newbie, that sometimes people want to throw things your way, you don't have to be the yes person. I'm not saying to be confrontational or to always tell your boss no, or that you don't want to be a team player. That's not what I'm saying at all. But sometimes people might not realize everything else you already have on their plate because they don't know your schedule. Only you do.
All right, you spent a good bit of time in the presentation talking about the company culture. And obviously you mentioned you could talk to the recruiter about it during the interview, but what are some other ways to really get an understanding of what that culture is going to be like both before you get started and once you have started the job?
Oh, I love that question. So besides the recruiter, there's also HR, because after the recruiter, and yes, the recruiter is part of HR, but they'll pass you along to another side of HR, or maybe HR for that specific branch, that specific location. You should, before you get started, also already have some type of contact with who your supervisor is going to be. The other great thing that I love to, especially before you enter work, is ask the recruiter if maybe there's an employee in the company that you can reach out to have a 1 hour conversation with them about the company. And I always love that idea. There's a lot of times that I've known individuals that have even asked me if they can do that from their first interview. They're like, hey, before we continue interviews, I would love to reach out to somebody that actually works within the company first. And they have that 1 hour conversation. So you can definitely ask that from the recruiter or from HR in that certain department if there's someone that you can already reach out to. If not, throughout the first week or your time there, as you're getting to know things, it's just asking, having lunch with individuals. I didn't mention this before, but the occasional happy hour social for you to go out with them as well. You don't have to go out with them all the time. I know sometimes you want to disconnect, but having the happy hour and getting to know how things work. Understanding the company culture as to if you see things like casual Friday, what does that really mean? Sometimes it's just asking the person that's sitting in the office next to you, hey, it's my first week, I don't know what this means. Or I read this, what does that really mean here? So definitely relying on your coworkers when it comes to that, and not being afraid. If it's someone from another department, you never know who you're going to get those tips and tricks from. But my favorite is definitely, especially if it's before work, asking if there's someone that you can call within the organization.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Jackie. It looks like we don't have any other questions. So before we wrap up, do you have any last final thoughts just kind of about the topic?
No, the only thing I will say is, and I know it's hard because we all went to college, we got our degrees and we want this amazing job, but you want to be happy. So I would say definitely go after a company that aligns with your values and not after the dollar signs or the money. Because your work-life balance and your happiness is so much more important than sometimes those dollar signs. And I can tell you from experience, I was always afraid of that. I tend to go after the dollar signs. And when I let go of that and really went after my values and what I believe in, and I found a company that the pay was decent and I was extremely happy. I was having such a fabulous time with them, and I grew so much as an individual. And then all of a sudden I was recruited for a company that aligned so well with my values, and the pay was there for it. But I stuck to my values and I stuck to what made me happy. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters. And your family and friends are the most important thing. So that will be my biggest tip or takeaway.
Perfect. Thanks, Jackie. So one last thank you for Jackie for her presentation and the knowledge she shared with us today. And thank you guys for joining us. Remind you all to log into the MyAKSI community where you can engage with other members in the collaboration groups and register for more upcoming events as they're posted in the events tab. So thank you for attending, and we'll see you in the MyAKSI community.